It's also my first time here of School of Luck's Circus School, which is based in Stroud, Gloucestershire. And I teach aerial. Most of our classes are aerial. And we used to do lots of classes and are now doing a few online sessions and trying to keep going.
Judah.
Hi there,
Judah?
hello.
Hi.
I just had to turn my microphone on. Hi, I'm Judah. I'm currently second year PhD doctoral student at London College of Communication, and I got involved with Upswing through their bungee dance classes. I took 3 sessions as a means to developing my animation skills and my understanding of animation and movement through animation. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Freya.
Hello. I am, where am I? I'm an acrobat. I work with Mimbra, and I currently am kind of giving up on England. I just left and went to Norway, where everything is safer.
Thank you, Freya. A bit jealous. Rowan.
Hey, I'm Rowan. I'm just about to graduate from Circomedia, as well as a hand balancer, performing and teaching, and I run a Bristol-based company called Branded Circus.
Thank you, Rowan. And hello, Emma, who's just joined us. Great. I mean, it's a real range of people in the room, which is really exciting. So thank you. And yes, obviously Circomedia well represented. So thank you, students from Circomedia and graduates, for joining us. I hope you'll find this useful. So obviously this is a big question, and I'm not suggesting that we find the answers in an hour, but certainly find some ways to find some hope in this situation, I think. I was reading just before we came on, someone put up on Facebook that the Telegraph had done a survey of the least essential workers, and artist was #1. So I thought that was quite, yeah, quite relevant as I was just about to do this conversation. So I think in terms of where to start, it's just, I suppose, talking about the uncertainty that moving forwards of what's to come. I think that the circus world, the performing world as we know it, certainly won't be as it was for a while. We're keeping everything crossed that there will be some kind of semblance of order. And so I suppose the first question is around what skills do we feel that we need moving forwards? I mean, is it a case of getting really, really good at your discipline, so when things do start happening again, you get all the work? Or is it thinking about, right, I've got to diversify and I've got to do a bit of this and a bit of this and a bit of this? So, I mean, there's these 2 schools of thought. I thought I'd just start that as an opener. Any takers? Phoebe.
Hey, yes, I've been thinking about this balance quite a lot recently, and where it's best to be putting effort in at this time when some of us are lucky to be afforded a bit of time. And it all, for me, keeps coming back to thinking about how, I'm looking both through circus and dance, and how people who work with their body have a lot of intelligence and skills that they can be transferable to be able to bring all of this into the wider communities, for it to be a benefit for the community and not just be kind of centered around performance, but how can it be centered back into putting back through to people that maybe even don't use their body or don't work with their body, and moving forward, whether there's ways that we can expand that way and kind of put back into a new system of working. So in my imaginations of it, it requires a big rejigging of the systems that are already in place, but it feels like a good time to be thinking big and then expand it and then like coming in. And so yeah, thinking about how also Circus can benefit people's health and mentality, mental health, and also physical well-being, and not be just something that's watched, but something that can be experienced more. I was wondering how to go about doing that in the going forward.
So your thinking is, right, okay, I've got this skill set. How do I kind of push it and transfer it into other places? Obviously, social distancing guidelines to meet and all of that sort of stuff. So, but you talk about systems. So, what systems do you recognise that need changing?
Recognise that with the health system being so overwhelmed, and we're not necessarily funded to the extent that it might seem that they are. I feel like it's quite difficult to understand what's going on with the NHS at the moment, but if there are ways to be able to really push more the health benefits, physically and mentally, that Circus can improve with people, and how there's so many people with the skills that can begin to facilitate other people being able to use these, whether there's ways because if it got to the point where somebody went to the NHS because they had problems with anxiety and depression, and instead of pumping through with antidepressants, there's then more access to programs where they can go, oh well, we've got this program of this might be a benefit doing, and working from like the inside out. That's like in the big nice imagination part, where I just think, oh, that would be fantastic if there's a way of reworking actual whole systems of how we operate. And instead of it, I think for me this pandemic has highlighted how much globally it seems that humans have kind of come to a single track mind of the self, and instead, if there's ways to, now that everyone's got these skills, to bring it together even more moving forward. That's my big dream of the future.
Let's start off with dreaming. That's brilliant. So pushing Circus within to health and well-being. So what, in terms of the skills, just thinking about the skills you need to make that happen, what would they be? So what do artists, I suppose, need to start thinking about if they're going to use their skills in these different sectors? And I suppose that it also comes down to this, how do we change the perception? How do we change the narrative of what Circus is? So how do we do that?
Oh, I don't know if anybody's got any ideas.
Ruby.
I think if we're talking about systems, then we should look at systems within Circus. So the establishments and companies and like the heads of Circus, and like how we organize and how we're run, and how that's like, if like this is a good time to notice what companies value artists and what companies maybe don't. And just looking at the ways that we work, or like community organization, kind of like Phoebe's saying, feels like the way forward, making stuff happen rather than just being another body for someone. I
Okay,
really know
great.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, this idea of making stuff happen, and I think that's something that Circus people have always done, isn't it? That I was in a meeting for the DCMS inquiry yesterday, and this whole idea of entrepreneurship that is often associated with circus artists. But what does, you know, it's a word that's bandied around a lot, but what does it actually mean? You know, I mean, it's often associated with fiscal return and business and stuff, but actually I think there's something a bit deeper than that. Throwing that to the group. Yes, Rowan.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. Circus people have always had to be proactive to find their own work, and now more than ever is an exposing time where the people who are doing things and are getting work are making their own work and trying to fit this art form around a new limitation, which is the internet. So obviously there's going forward where we are going to be able to do social distancing gigs and actual physical gigs again. But right now, the entirety of our work is happening through screens, which is really interesting. That's something that has probably been done with Circus before, but now it's our only option. You know, it's that there's so many online cabarets and stuff happening at the moment. So many people trying to get Circus out to people through a screen. I think that's, yeah, it's great. It's great to see. It's really, and also there's the thing on, is this making Circus more accessible? Are these limitations inherently getting Circus out to a audience that might not necessarily see Circus? We don't have to bring people into theatres at the moment. We can take it to them. We are appearing on screens all over the place at the moment. So, sorry, that was just wow.
So using, sorry, you kept coming in and out there, Owen, but what I heard was so this pandemic has kind of, I suppose in a way, sort of separated the chaff from the wheat, and those that there are some people who are proactive and using this as an opportunity to really engage with the digital form. And with that comes greater accessibility, reaching audiences. I wonder if there's a little bit of preaching to the choir on that, in terms of, are we reaching audiences that would come and see it anyway? I wonder. I mean, certainly bigger audiences, definitely. And also, I suppose what's going to change possibly over lockdown is how we earn money, in terms of because of the huge digital presence. Actually, are we kind of devaluing what we're doing? I mean, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that is another question around that. So again, I think what you're saying, Rowan, is this sort of entrepreneurship, grabbing an opportunity, going with it. So okay, if you haven't done that before, how do you learn how to do that? Yes, Mark.
So, well, for me, but and for people of mine and Lynn's generation of circus performers, that it was always very much about about being outside the walls. That circus had this thing about being, we were the rule breakers, the anarchists. It was, don't ask permission, ask forgiveness, just get out there and do it. And I've been seeing some of this in on Thursday night performances. Now that we've stopped our Thursday night clap, but people taking that as a performance opportunity, and performing for their neighbors because they're all out there anyhow, and passing the hat. And so it's fine. It's just kind of, I think it's being open and aware. What can I do? Where can I get out there? Well, you can see the Thames behind me. The buskers are out again, outside the Tate Gallery. People are performing again outside of, so street performance is beginning to happen again. Greenwich and Docklands Festival is going ahead in August. Outdoors.
Ah.
Yeah. That's definitely happening. Outdoors is happening. Outdoors is really happening in Germany and in France. Natalie, who I work with, is off to Germany to do a series of performances, outdoor performances. But again, she's doing more shows to fewer people so they can make the festival happen, you know, by keeping social distancing. So to go back to your very first question about whether we pursue diversity or excellence, I think it has to be about diversity. I think it has to be about broadening your skills. You know, we're trying to remake our show for outdoors. We're going, how do we do this show? How do the two of us perform on stage with social distancing? How do we load in and load out with social distancing? Kind of imagining those kind of restrictions. How do we get around them? And what are the other opportunities that are not online? Because it really doesn't look like theatres are not going to open anytime soon. And even when they do, if they're going to pursue any kind of social distancing, how are they going to make any money? You know, you'll have to be so distant from each other. I'm sure you've all seen the pictures of the Berlin Opera House with, you know, 2/3 of the seats taken out. Who's going to be making money from that? So yeah, diversity, imagination, how can we get out there? How can we do it? And how can we, with the bonus, make some money from doing it?
Thank you, Mark. And I mean, Mark and Lynn, as two people who were sort of really involved in the growth of an emergence of contemporary circus in the UK. Does this feel familiar in some ways, in terms of sort of having to start again? Or is that a very, very reductive question? Lynn?
Yes, feels familiar. It's a bit back to the 80s and having to reinvent what we do, really, and learn new skills and start again and be adaptable. Totally agree with what Mark says, and I think it is an opportunity to start looking at different ways of performing again. I mean, and being more spontaneous with it. You know, I think one of the things that was great about those times was the fact that we would just turn up somewhere with a set of clubs and do a show and make it up as we went along, and you know, and it was great. It was really good fun for us, and I think fun for an audience as well. So I think, you know, we are adaptable and you know, we are resilient, and I think it's we can take the opportunity to do stuff. You know, I wanted to bring up, I was talking with the guys in Canada last week who've done a survey with École Nationale du Cirque about the effects of lockdown on their students, and they did the same survey with the Circus School, with the National School of Theatre, with sport, and with ballet, and all of they got all the answers back and looked at them, and the circus people turned out to be the most resilient from the questions that they asked, and things, which I thought was really interesting. You know, they're all high level, doing quite under quite a lot of stress, doing the work that they do usually. For some reason, circus turns out more resilient people, which I thought was, you know, was really interesting to look at. Going back to what you were saying about the usefulness of artists and the Telegraph thing, I think that for me it goes back to the whole Maslow thing, like the pyramid. You know, you've got, at the moment we're in survival mode, and that, you know, so everybody's going to be thinking right now about surviving. So of course all of the, you know, stuff, the jobs that we need to survive, like healthcare being at the top of it, that is going to appear to be the most useful, and artists the least useful. I think once we get out of survival mode, actually, you know, we're going to need artists, and we're going to need people to, you know, especially I think we're heading for a massive mental health crisis. People are going to need artists to improve quality of life. You know, that's what we do. We make life worth living, and you know, it's about living and not existing.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting what you said about the Maslow reference. However, the thing that everybody's been doing in lockdown is art.
Yeah, totally.
to keep themselves sane. So there's kind of they kind of don't get it. They don't realise that actually the whole time the thing that they've been looking at, or the games they've been playing, or the art they've been doing is the art, and you need artists to create all of that. So those of you who are either students or just, you know, emerging, how do you feel about you know, this idea of just getting out there and doing it in spontaneity, and how does that sit with you? Freya, is that your hand?
It's my hand. Hello. I think that like on the other side of the like first impact of this whole thing going down, I think that I mean, I can only speak for Circomedia, obviously, but like the training that we got kind of made us able to navigate this crisis. But I think that it was, I want to say, I think that it was kind of not done on purpose, but I don't know if it was like not done on purpose, or that it was like pushed down because students feel that other things are more important, if you know what I mean. But I think that like, because circus is a really hard industry already, everyone is already aware that we have to like find things and create our own solutions. And I also think that like, having seen my fellow either students or alumni through this crisis, like what they decide to do and how they use their days proves that as well. Like, not that like most people haven't like done amazing things that they can brag about, because there's a quarantine and people are dying, there's a lot of things going on. But like, I think the like foundation for these kind of skills already are there. It's just that like they can be like picked up and fine-tuned or made better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so the foundation for these skills are already there. So what skills are you talking about?
Like understanding what art is, as in it doesn't have to be a routine that you do and this is your routine and you do that. Like the fact that it can be big and messy and all over the place, and I want to say the understanding of the art sector, but I don't know if that's actually a skill that we were taught that much. Maybe as like a side thing, but yeah, I think like those two together, like the understanding of art and the understanding of the sector together, along with like you just have to work really hard.
Okay, so that those sort of foundations of understanding of art, and what art, that it can be messy, that it can be small, that it can be big, and sort of the sector, and that kind of gave you a basis to deal with lockdown. So what about beyond lockdown? How do you deal with uncertainty? How do you deal with what's coming next?
I procrastinate.
Rowan's
You don't deal with it.
Is that no? Oh, Ruby, thank you, Ruby.
Well, now I'm worried. I've got to have a good point. Yeah, I think the thing you were saying about artists being the least valued job and stuff, like part of me thinks that means then we need to prove that we're useful, and that's like where community stuff comes in, and like just making stuff happen, or on a more localized level, making things happen for people. And yeah, it's difficult because obviously a lot of that is hard to then make any money from. So a lot of it is being like, just use your art for good, but also everyone needs rent and stuff. But yeah, just making stuff happen, I guess. And yeah, diversifying is definitely the thing, but I think that was how I think probably Circomedia at least teaches us to be, because yeah, I mean, I never thought I was only going to make money from one thing or just do one thing really well and that was going to sort me out. Like, never had any illusions about that. Yeah. What was my point? Maybe I had a better
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, yeah, Phoebe.
Yeah, just like slightly going on from that, when you're talking about what skills needed, I think it's rather than at the moment it's hard for me to be able to try and pinpoint what skills they are, but going on from what Ruby said about never really feeling like, you know, this is going to be the one form of income. Actually, you'll find that every artist has got such a wide range of skills. It's not like a base knowledge, but it depends on anything that they've been able to pick up to help them with their journey and their progression. So one person will have skills that they've picked up from doing hospitality work, and others will have understanding from doing different community work, and how that actually working with others that aren't necessarily artists, like circus artists are used to working with every type of person as well, and not just within the circus realm. So I think it's, instead of trying to pinpoint what skills, it's actually about having discussions about what skills people have and what skills that they feel like they can bring to the table, because it's not that everyone's just got their discipline that they're good at. If everybody was to sit down and think, okay, throughout my life, what different skills have I been able to pick up, then being able to share it from that point, you'll be able to see that actually there's lots of things that could come together to build. And even if it's not that there's experience within it, there can be like the base, like seeds of knowledge to be able to. So I think instead of trying to find what the thing is, it's more about discussing what we already have between us, which begins to spark inspiration, ideas for what skills could be relevant and used moving forward.
Great, thank you, Phoebe. Okay, so having conversations of the skills available to you, whether that's, you know, from different sectors, and I really like what Ruby was saying about you know, proving our value, proving our worth. Well, worth is a bit strong really, but proving our value of going out there and doing stuff and making things happen. And I know, you know, as Mark said, you know, I think the circus sector has always been great problem solvers, and I know Billy Orwin from Cirque has basically bet that it's going to be the circus community who get going first, and that the other sectors are going to come knocking, going, how do we do that? So you know, we've always been problem solvers, and also we can work outdoors. I'm trying to, Harley, then Charlie.
Just quickly on that point, I think that calling ourselves or thinking of ourselves as artists and labeling ourselves as that might be a little bit reductive to a point. I think thinking of ourselves as teachers or possibly community leaders, inventors, innovators, stuff like this, and sort of broadening how we view ourselves is a really important way of diversitizing both what we can do, but also our audience and what other people think of us. I think this idea of us as the artist in this time, while it can be sort of self-motivating, I think it might be a little bit misplaced when we're looking outwards instead of inwards.
Thank you, Harley. Charlie.
Yeah, I guess we're talking a lot about how and what skills we find, and how do we broaden our skills, which is what we certainly do. And I think to kind of use the analogy of circus, which we all understand, and talk about how we train and how we it's all about trial and error. And I think it's all about us learning from those times that we fall. And there's going to be a lot of those. And I think it's really about just trying, and the answers that we're looking for, we hopefully don't have the questions for, because ideally we're going to find those answers that are so much more exciting than what's out there already. And I think that's how circus people think about when they're creating. That ideally they want to, the final product is going to be way grander in the sense of larger than they can imagine, because that's our ideal. And so I think there's a lot of listening and a lot of looking outwards and trying and failing. And I think now is a pretty tricky time to fail. I think it's harder for people to fail because the risks are much grander. So I wonder how much we're going to see of new things, because you have to be in a certain privileged position to be able to fucking bet everything, which before circus people thrive on because they have a safety net. I think one interesting thing that's happened is everything's becoming a bit more localized, and companies, for example, Acting for Climate, have made they have different consulates. They have a Scandi consulate, and then they have a Montreal consulate, and that's very intriguing. And they understand that they want to reach both worlds, but that they can't as individuals. And so that we can stay local and we work with groups locally, but kind of far away. And I think that's an intriguing thing that I wonder whether that can continue and inspire new options, because touring is not going to be a thing perhaps, or it's going to be much a smaller touring circuit or localized. Also, I think about energy of this quarantine, and it goes in waves, and we all have our own different, and there'll be some weeks where we're feeling on top of the world and like, yeah, I can do this. And I guess we just have to really understand that everyone's on their own waves. And even with all this rioting and protesting and, the EDL guys, they have their wave now of like, I've had enough of this, blah, 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 blah. And I think there just has to be that acceptance of people are going to go in waves because everyone's like boxed in, and it takes different people pop at different times. So it's a lot of listening, I think.
Thank you, Chair. I loved a lot of what you said then, especially the answers that we find we don't have the questions for. I think that's really exciting, and I think looking at uncertainty with excitement is brave, but a much better place to be in than being scared of it, I guess. And also what you're saying about it is harder to fail at the moment because the landscapes change so much. It was really interesting. I was having a conversation with a student earlier who was asking me how I was in lockdown, and I said, I'm getting involved in this conversation later, and I said I'm much prefer driving the bus than running after it, and that's what I'm kind of encouraging a lot of the students to get involved and be part of the solution and be part of what it looks like next. Otherwise, I find that a much easier way of dealing with uncertainty. Just thinking about where to take the conversation next. So we've let's take it back to this thing of, okay, the skills. Let's hone it right down to, we've talked a lot about in fact, let's talk about the hard skills. We've talked about diversifying, and we've talked a lot about those skills inherent in being a circus performer. But going back to Phoebe's initial comment about thinking about circus and in mental health, circus and NHS, what are the hard skills we need in order to kind of to apply that diversification. You know, Rowan's talked about moving stuff digitally, which some people have done. Rowan's done it really successfully. But I know some people found that really problematic. So what are the hard skills that we need to encourage or learn ourselves to negotiate this new landscape? I said I didn't have the answers. Well, those of you who've just recently graduated or emerging artists, what do you feel you need? Where are your where are the holes in your skill set? Phoebe.
Anything that involves writing something that's official and that involves asking either somebody for money or funding, or yeah, that knowledge of the language of the world in the way where you can put it forward, where somebody can then go, oh, actually, yeah, this seems like a viable thing, we'll put some money towards it. I feel like that's a big skill set that I haven't gone anywhere near and find it really difficult to even begin to want to touch it.
Okay, so that sort of official writing, fundraising, getting stuff for people to take it seriously. Okay, great. Rowan.
I think as there's a few recent graduates and emerging artists in here, something that I think a skill is learning how to cope with imposter syndrome. Like, now is not the time for that. And emerging artists are full of that. Like, just coming out of circus school, not knowing if we're good enough to be in the market yet, and then the market collapses. Like, yeah, it's a bit of a difficult time, but a skill that a lot of us need to take on right now is just be confident in what you're making, know that you belong in this market, and just run after it. Or drive that bus.
Yeah, and it's great what Charlie said. It's, you know, it's hard to fail at the moment. You know, it's like, the walls have come down. Great, thank you, Rowan. Great. Anything else? Yeah, Ruby.
This isn't skills, because that question seems to have stumped me really badly.
You know everything.
With I guess, so not just narrowing down our skills, but narrowing down like what circus is to us, or I mean, defining circus is long and boring, but maybe more just like what circus is to you, or what's important in the essence of circus and what we do, and how that can be transferred somewhere else. So it's easy, for example, for me as an aerialist to be like, I can't do my thing, and that's a hard one to take out on the streets or whatever. But like, actually, what is it in the essence of circus or performing? Like, is it risk or connection or whatever? And then like, how can that be transferred into the world that exists?
Great. And so it goes the transformation and of the art form and the advancement of that. Yeah, great. Anything else around skills you need to navigate that landscape that might be beyond? I know, Alyssa, you talked a bit about marketing when we met, haven't you? No?
Sorry, my thingy had broken for a second. Yeah, I've looked into marketing a bit, trying to see more of the business side as a bit of a reach to find out what we're going to need to do as performers and to like fit into the new world. Is that weird to say? In terms of like marketing is going to be health and safety now. I was talking to Billy and we were saying that the main forefront of how we're going to advertise ourselves will have to be what we can bring to the table in terms of health and safety. So I've just been doing a lot of research in how I can problem solve in that way. But yeah, I'm finding it a bit difficult to know how to do that.
What are you finding difficult?
To know where
where and how to problem solve in terms of persuading audiences to come see shows, just for example, how we can provide some confidence in health and safety for audiences. Because doing it digitally was one way, because obviously they're all at home, but in terms of getting audiences to come to certain places, how do we market that? How do we reassure audiences that they're going to be safe and keep performers safe as well?
Yeah, great. There are lots of conversations around that at the moment. So, but if you're talking to Billy about that already, he's plugged into all of that. But I think those are conversations that are sector wide, not just as an emerging performer. Rowan, did you have your hand up? Yeah.
On the other half of what Alyssa's saying and what Kate just touched on is like performers. How are performers going to socially distance? I know that was mentioned earlier. Just out of interest, has anybody had any discussions on possible solutions? There's things in Circus especially where we are throwing each other about, we're touching all the time. Can certain aspects of Circus, like partner acro and stuff, survive with social distancing, or is that something that we're going to have to bank for later?
Mark.
Yeah, I think just to reply to Rowan's question, I mean, that's a really interesting one. So, you know, and Natalie and I have had extensive conversations about that. You know, we work together, but we don't live together. So how do we do that? You know, do we create, you know, now the government talks about bubbles, about forming your own bubbles, you know, and we thought, well, this is the way to do it. You know, this is the way forward. It's about, you know, those intersecting bubbles and keeping ourselves individually as safe as possible. There's also the model that that the England and West Indies cricket team have been taking. Okay, so I know I'm perhaps the only serious cricket fan here, but you know, they made, and also this is what Premiership football clubs are doing as well. It's that they are basically they are isolating themselves. So up in Manchester at Old Trafford, the West Indies and the England cricket teams, plus the umpires, the physiotherapists, the coaches, all the support staff, have been sequestered in a hotel on the ground for the last few weeks, and they are going to keep themselves in this bubble for the next, you know, for the next 2 months while they play a series of test matches, not in front of audiences. And that's their decision about how they keep themselves safe. And I can see that happening, you know, with circus companies, with circus troupes. The place where you have to watch out for is how, you know, like you see it in people who, circus performers who live together in warehouses here in London. But it's when you get outside of that, as I mentioned earlier, when you're bumping a show in and out, you know, how do you then keep safe from the people who are helping you to do that? You know, do you kind of go, okay, we're all in masks and visors? Yeah, it's that kind of, making that kind of risk assessment. So then risk assessment and the ability to do that becomes a skill.
Yeah.
But I just kind of just backtrack just a tiny bit about, because frankly, I don't see our traditional forms of performance coming back anytime soon. I don't see us getting back into the theatres. I don't see us having access to public funding anytime soon. You know, the economy is taking a huge hit, and you know, the case for the arts is one which we have to keep making. You know, that the creative arts contributes hugely to the economy, and we have to keep letting people know that. You know, that's putting pressure on the Chancellor, that's, you know, making sure that the people in government understand that every year in London alone, twice as many people go to theatres, go to Premiership football matches. You know, and yet, you know, they're trying to get football going as fast as possible. So it's making the case, but then, so we kind of go, okay, we're not going back into theatre, we're not going to go back into the big top soon. Then it's about being inventive about how we get out there and do it. And then the skills that you need for that are bravery, resilience, chutzpah, something to show, whatever that may be. You know, when I was at full-time, we had a street performance module, and they basically sent us out to Broadmead and went, okay. Which was difficult, but on the other hand, you know, over the course of 2 weeks, you learned something. Yeah. So it's hard to fail, you know, as Charlie said, you know, this is a very difficult time to be failing, but, you know, at the end of the day, you have to, it's a nestle, I think we're all going to have to grasp.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just being brave and getting out there, making that new form of.
Thank you, Mark. I think we've got about 10 minutes. Is that right, Emma?
Yeah, about 15, yeah.
Okay, cool. While people have been talking, I've kind of gone, oh, you know, so when Rowan was talking about the imposter syndrome thing, I was kind of thinking, well, what you need is a mentor or someone to kind of go, come on, you know, you need like your own cheerleader. But I was just thinking about, so that we can end on quite a kind of practical way to support each other and to support the sector moving forwards. Has anybody got any ideas of how to support each other, whether it's around skilling up in those areas that we need it, in terms of, I mean, like Mark was saying about, we've got to be advocates for the arts. It's really, really important at the moment. So ways that we can do that. Any ideas of you know, how to get out there and opportunities. So yeah, just open the floor with that one. So opportunities, way to support each other. Yeah, that kind of thing. It's a message from Amy here. Message from Amy on the chat if anybody would like to have a look. Great, thank you, Amy. That's a really helpful resource. Thank you. Sorry, Lynn, I put my chat over the top of you. I couldn't see you.
So just looking at what skills we need, I think the main two for me are communication and connection. Yeah. I think, you know, on all levels, we need to work out how to communicate with people and how to communicate about what we do and the benefits of it, and also connect with each other and connect with people who can support and, you know, help us with it as well. Just wanted to say something about the conference we've got coming up. So we're going to start, we've got a couple of practice sessions, which I'm going to invite you to, definitely, Kate, so you can have a look around the platform. And
right.
And yeah, if people are interested, we're going to have a couple of sessions in the next couple of weeks of seeing how we can make it work. The platform that we're using is called Kiko Chat, and it's a very Improbable used it for their open space, if anyone went to that. And it's very, it means that you've got loads of rooms that people can wander in and out of as they want to, and you can put topics in each room so you can see what the topics are and also who's in there. So we're going to have stuff like practical rooms where people can, you know, Sean Gandini's going to do some juggling sessions for us, and Matt Henham and people like that. We've got the Canadian researchers are going to do some sessions as well on the stuff that they've been doing. So they'll be talking about this ENC survey. But we're looking for all of the ways that we can support our sectors. So, you know, we'll have panel discussions on getting circus schools open again, and insurance, and you know, just trying to use the whole platform as ways where people can just sit in small groups and talk about what we're doing and how we can make things work. Brilliant. So, and that's going to run every week all summer, basically. So it'll be like a two and a half hour session where we network and get to talk about all of that kind of stuff and to learn things. And you can, the way that the chat works, you kind of have the equivalent of a flip chart in each room, so you can put post-its on it. You can collect all of those notes, so we can have topics that continue from week to week. So you can build, if someone wasn't there in the last week, that can go and have a look at it and read what's been talked about and then add to it as well. So hopefully it'll, over the summer, it'll be a continuous conversation and a place where people can just go and hang out and communicate and talk and, you know, support each other, and we can learn how we can support people as well.
Great, Lynn, that sounds brilliant. Holly's just said, can you provide a link? Is it up yet, or
it's not? But if what's the best way of doing it? If you have a look on our Facebook page, if you go to there, I'll put something on there.
Great. So because Circus Works usually do a conference in about September, don't you? Which is about over 3 days or something. So to understand that every week there'll be a sort of 2.5 hour Zoom. Quick. I can't remember what it's called, but I know what you mean.
It's called, yeah. It's a wrap around for Zoom, so it's lots of Zoom conversations in different rooms.
Yeah.
But you can move yourselves around. It's not like this one. You can choose which room you go into, basically.
Great. Thank you. Well, that's great. Okay, so we've got Circus Works. Mark's put just a Creative Industries Federation in terms of advocacy. Anything else that maybe you can do on a more local level in terms of advocacy, or even just supporting one another? Going back to what Phoebe said about almost kind of collating skills. Who do you know, and what skills do they have, and seeing if you can skill swap amongst you, just to skill up and get ready. Claudia.
Within our school, we've been running weekly training sessions. So one teacher might teach juggling to everyone, even though some of us can't juggle at all. And it's just been nice sharing skills. If we've been aerialists, then we've just done some sort of conditioning. But it's been really nice checking in with everyone, and it just makes us feel more like a team. But I wonder if in a slightly wider community we could maybe have local circus people meeting, or we could go wider, perhaps.
Great, thanks, Claudia. That's a great idea. I mean, potentially that's something that could come out of Circus Works, is to have maybe some regional, or even before that, but maybe, we could chat about that. I know we've got to go back into the room in a minute, and Vicky will ask me what we've talked about, and even though I've taken some notes, it might not be very fluid. So I just wondered if you could tell me what was useful for you in this conversation. We've probably got about 10 minutes.
Yeah, I reckon about 10 minutes.
Great. So what's been your takeaways from this? Anyone? Go, Ruby.
I think for me, it's just nice to start thinking forwards. It feels a little bit like there's an end in sight. I feel like I've been in quite a lot of Zooms where we're talking about everything that's not working and everything that's not happening. And it's nice to just sort of look forward and start to, get my brain working about ideas for the future and actually making stuff happen rather than just waiting for stuff to happen.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Ruby. That's great. Yes, Charlie.
I think Claudia just touched on a really interesting thing of working for our community as well as for the greater community. So, there's talk about comedians, for example, that are the comedian's comedian. That the normal Joe don't go and watch them because they don't think they're very funny. But
that's my friend's podcast.
I haven't seen this on a podcast, but but I think that's a really interesting thing, and Claudia just touched upon to do stuff for our community.
Yes.
So that then we are developing our community, that then we throw seeds around so that then kind of things grow around, instead of the idea of just creating for and working for the greater. So they definitely both have a place, but that's an interesting differentiation to touch upon, I think.
How can we do that then, Charlie?
I think it's just being aware of the differentiation. So to know that this is to foster, for example, this chat, this is to foster a community that then will help foster the greater community.
Yeah.
Being aware that, for example, you make Circus for circus people, or you make it's having that focus so that you can deliver appropriately. so that's really nice what Claudia was saying about, you know, we're just a group of circus people and we're helping each other, and then they will help other people.
Yeah, great, thank you. Phoebe?
I think one good takeaway is just the thing that keeps coming to mind of like, got these ideas, but coming back to how do we do that? That's kind of the question that's really important, that will take a bit longer maybe to answer than initially think, that it's not as easy as being like, okay, well, we just go around and do this. But actually, by even just asking that question, it kind of cements or like opens up the creativity in the mind to be like, okay, well, actually we might have to take a bit of time really working out how that is going to be feasible. But by already acknowledging that, then it's taking that step. And so it's not necessarily pressured to be like, don't know the answer right now, but we can start to think about it. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and also thinking about who you can ask to help and open doors, and you know, do you know anyone who works in mental health in the NHS? Can you try something out? Can you know, prove that it's useful? So just thinking about all those doorways that can lead you through. Great, thank you, Phoebe. Anyone else still after takeaways with your Deliveroo? So for those of you who may not have seen it, Lynn set up a Facebook group to join the group and send invites to the conference in Circus Work. So that's in the chat. Emma, when these are recorded, is there a way to get the chat as well?
Yeah, I'll save it. I was just thinking about saving it all and putting it in the other one as well when we go in, so that everyone can see, but I will save it, yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, I'll go with my takeaway then, as no one else is feeling very chatty. This has been really affirming, and because, you know, there is a lot of resilience and creativity amongst, I mean, I kind of knew there was, but it's really great to hear people really talking about it, and so lovely to have Mark and Lynn in the room who've kind of, you know, been there before, and it also kind of makes me think that there's so many layers to this. So one is about the skills that we know we have, but also being able to articulate that, especially to the outside world, who maybe have a preconception of what circus is, that it's, you know, frivolous and you know, not of value. So really being able to articulate those skills, but then also on a practical level, really thinking about the hard skills that are going to be needed to negotiate what comes up, and whether that is just chutzpah and going for it, or whether it's more of the kind of you know, writing to your MP or canvassing, or, you know, lobbying for greater value in the arts, whatever it is. I'm waffling now, so I shut up. Right.
That's perfect timing, actually, Kate.
Oh, Mark's got something to say.
Oh, good. We've got 2 minutes.
So for me, just maybe one small takeaway is about how we support people to give them that confidence and that chutzpah. You know, how do we do that? You know, do we set up some kind of informal mentoring? I think the idea of mentoring was very good, or even just about direction. You know, about saying, you know, yeah, I'm happy to watch anything, and feedback on that. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of people who, like me, who kind of have some experience and be happy to share that and help people make work.
Great, thank you, Mark. And Phoebe?
Just thinking, even then, it could be as simple as just setting up a buddy system where you just have one other person where you've just got someone to feedback from it. Because at the moment, I feel like, I don't know if it's the case for everybody, but where we're all locked down inside, you can get into your own echo chamber, but also you can necessarily only sometimes reach out to certain people that you already have or have awareness of you. But in terms of having a buddy system where you just can talk to somebody that's still within the sector but maybe has different experiences, or can see it from a different point of view rather than you always kind of seeing it through your own lens.
Great. I'll talk to Vicky or Emma. Maybe we could talk to Vicky about setting something up like that up. That would be great. Great.
Yeah, that's a great. Yeah, cool. Thanks,
everyone. I hope you found that useful and hopeful, which was the main aim. I think we're being transported back to the room.
We're almost, yeah, we've got about 30 seconds, guys.
Oh, okay.
See you there.
Okay. What happens now?
It takes a bit of a minute, sorry.
Okay. Here we go.
It's a bit of an odd, yeah. Okay, just waiting for everyone to come through. Hello. I think that's us all here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's us.
Cool. Welcome back to the main room, everyone. I'm sure there's a lot of curiosity about what happened in the other rooms, and it might be good just as a closer for anyone to share a few snippets of the conversation that came up. Kate, I'm looking at you.
Sorry, I didn't see you looking at me. Well, I thought you might do this, so tried to find out what was useful. We had a lovely conversation. I think I found it really useful, and it was great because we had a real range of people still studying, emerging artists, and what we call wise artists, which was really great to have a whole range of experience and questions. So what was particularly affirming was the amount of positivity in the room, and really, leaning back on those skills that we know we have as circus performance of creative problem solving and resilience and collaboration and entrepreneurship, but then also talking a little bit about what's happening in the sector and the little opportunities that are beginning to come up, and how we can also create opportunities. There's Charlie Wheeler said something fantastic, which was it's really difficult to fail at the moment. And Mark Moreau was also talking about thinking back to, I hope you don't mind me saying this, Mark, back to the 80s and going out and just doing stuff. And that there's a bit of a, a feeling of returning to that, and how we sort of teach those chutzpah skills of kind of just getting out there and being brave. And that all felt really energized. And then we also talked about, the hard skills that we need. Oh, we also had a really very brief discussion, because I think we all agreed on a sort of excellence or diversification. And we felt in the room, diversification at the moment is key. So then thinking about the extra skills that we need as artists to be able to diversify, to negotiate that landscape. So thinking about, sort of whether it's writing official documents or fundraising, or thinking about marketing or digital, just really thinking about the extra skills that potentially we need and where we can go to get that. So really trying to sort of pin it down in whether it's people we know. Rowan, who's a student at Circomedia at the moment, was talking about imposter syndrome, that when you're a graduate you feel, am I good enough? So out of that we started talking about possible sort of mentoring, and I can't remember who suggested, I think Phoebe suggested maybe working out some sort of buddy system of just being each other's cheerleaders moving forwards, which I think is a really great idea. Then also thinking about ways, so Lynn, Carol was talking about the most important things at the moment is communication amongst our own sector, but also to the wider world, of the value of what we do. And Ruby Burgess was talking about going out there and proving the value of what we do, whether that's in our own communities. Phoebe had a great idea of going into the NHS and doing stuff with mental health. And then we talked about various conferences. So Circus Works conference is coming up. Lynn was telling us about that. I think that's about it. Have I missed anything? Or would anybody like to add?
Well, the videos will be available online for anyone who wants to take a deep dive and kind of watch the whole discussion. I'll be fairly brief about summing up our room. It was a really, really stimulating discussion about different experiences people have had creating and collaborating online. And we really went into all of the challenges that people were actually experiencing in connection and finding ways to address that in directing or communicating and collaborating at a distance. Angeliki has written a really beautiful booklet from the process that she had of hosting an aerial residency online with people who didn't have access to their equipment, but were thinking about how they could use, how they could interrogate their aerial practice. Am I articulating it correctly, Angeliki? Yeah, okay, she's nodding and thumbs up, so that's not too bad. There were some great examples from Lee Tinian about an exploration that he's doing at the moment with performance contexts online, mixing as close as you can have to a live audience on Zoom and a distance audience on Facebook Live, and kind of playing with that environment and what it offers him as a practitioner. Barra was sharing a really exciting digital residency that they hosted recently, where people were actually working in these online spaces together, you know, having collective space and private studio space online to share ideas, and that was a really exciting offer. We talked about the challenges in translating something that is a kinesthetic practice, how we work, not just what it is that we do, and finding a way to make that work at a distance. You know, how do you articulate and direct somebody when you're used to doing that through touch and physical communication? Freya, I think you had your hand up.
I was just trying to look at the chat.
Oh, okay, cool. And again, that's been filmed and recorded, so we will be uploading that to share for anyone who wants to listen in on the conversation. There were some really, really interesting things that were coming up. Cool. Unless anybody has anything that they want to jump in and say or share, I think we've probably had just about enough Zoom for now. Wonderful. It's been a real pleasure to see you all. We are now starting to kind of slowly ooze, I'm calling it an ooze, out of lockdown. I have a feeling that we might be back again, but anyway, no comment about our government there. But there is a transitional moment that's happening here where all of this experience, what we have captured through this moment, could just dissipate. And I'd really encourage anyone who has the time or the capacity just to find a way to log some of the things that have come out of this lockdown moment for them, before we kind of go into another process where we're all running and we forget the knowledge and the learning that we have gained in this moment. Cool. All right, thank you so much. And we will see you again. We're coming back in 3 weeks, Emma?
Yeah, we haven't quite set the date yet, but I will let you know as soon as we have. We should know by the end of this week. And I'll put the stuff together, but just to say, it'll probably take me a couple of days, I think. So hopefully I'll get it all out to you by the end of the week with the chats and everything. And just to highlight the Surge Cabaret tonight, I've put in the chat. I would totally recommend coming along. And yes, Lee will be there. Yay! Looking forward to it.
Wonderful. And again, if anyone has a burning topic of conversation that they want to bring out to the community, please do get in touch, and I'm sure we can find a way to facilitate that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks.
Bye-bye.